It was just past 7:30 p.m. when the ballroom doors opened, letting in a breeze of laughter and perfume. The gala had been in full swing for nearly an hour. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like distant stars, casting halos across gold-trimmed walls. Waiters moved in coordinated silence, weaving through guests dressed in velvet, silk, and arrogance. Emma Cruz moved among them, her tray steady in her hands, her simple black dress pressed and plain. She didn't stand out. That was the point. Her hair was tied back in a neat low bun, no jewelry, no makeup beyond a neutral lip. To most, she was invisible. Just another server trying not to bump into heels and suit jackets. But the ones who did notice her noticed for the wrong reasons. A woman in an emerald green gown, posture sharp enough to draw blood, caught Emma's arm as she passed. "You're holding that tray like you're digging ditches," she said, not lowering her voice. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Guests nearby turned, smirking over champagne glasses. Emma looked at her, steady and still, then quietly adjusted her grip and moved on. By the time she reached the head table, the air around her had already shifted. People didn't need a reason to judge someone. Her shoes were plain, her face unreadable, her posture straight. That was enough. A man in a navy suit, his tie the color of ox blood and tucked into a silver clip, gave her a once-over. "Where did they find you?" he muttered to no one in particular, but loud enough. His date chuckled, brushing a curl from her forehead, her bracelet clinking against the stem of her wine glass. Emma didn't flinch. She set the glass down in front of him with practiced precision, then turned her body to block out their expressions. She moved like someone who'd done this 1,000 times, but not like someone numb to it. Every step was calm, controlled, like there was a thread pulling her through the noise. Not angry, just bracing. At the edge of the ballroom, behind a mirrored panel, she caught a glimpse of herself. The light above turned the reflection faint, like a ghost version of who she used to be. She lifted her hand for a second and brushed her wrist with her thumb. There, faded and soft, was the outline of a small rose. It had been inked by a friend of her father's, back when she was 16 and still danced barefoot in their apartment kitchen. She could almost hear his voice now, husky from work and old whiskey. "You carry it with you, mija." "Yeah, whiskey." He'd drawn the same rose on napkins and brown bags when she was little, said it was strong, not delicate. It grew where people least expected beauty to survive. She blinked the thought away and stepped back into the blur of tuxedos and teeth. At 8:15 p.m., the champagne ran low. Emma crossed the floor with a fresh bottle, her steps unhurried, her eyes skimming for raised hands. A couple near the dance floor waved her over, and as she leaned to refill the woman's glass, the man leaned sideways, his breath thick with gin. "You don't look like the rest of them," he said. "Not much sparkle tonight." He grinned like he'd said something clever. Emma didn't respond. She finished pouring and stepped back. People weren't cruel here in loud, obvious ways. They delivered their punches wrapped in politeness, sealed with a smirk. But Emma felt every one of them. The looks, the half-jokes, the fact that no one remembered her name. By 8:40 p.m., she had made 2 full rounds. Her back ached, but her posture stayed straight. A group near the piano had started laughing again, loud and careless. As she passed, someone called out, "Bet you thrifted that dress." "Huh." Emma paused only for a moment, long enough to glance down at the hem of her dress. It was neat, well-fitted, wrinkle-free, not designer, but clean. Her hand tightened around the stem of a glass, then released. She kept walking. She didn't need to answer. Her steps were her answer. Her silence was her boundary. That night, they didn't see it. But later, they would. It was just past 9 o'clock when the shift in the room became noticeable. The music had changed. A slow, moody melody drifting from the string quartet tucked behind a row of floral arrangements. Emma Cruz moved silently between tables, tray balanced, eyes focused on glass stems and careful steps. She didn't hear her name, but she felt it like a prickling behind her neck. Near the center of the room, a young woman with too much lip gloss and too little sincerity tilted her head and said loud enough for others to hear, "Isn't she Argentine? Don't they all know Tango by default?" Her voice was sweet, but sharp, like a knife wrapped in lace. The man next to her let out a loud snort and leaned back in his chair, calling over to Emma without looking at her. "Hey, sweetheart, show us some of that Buenos Aires fire. Or can you only carry drinks?" Laughter rippled through the table. It wasn't kind. It was the kind of laughter meant to box someone in. Emma stopped beside the next guest, her hand hovering just above the neck of a bottle. She didn't look up, but her posture shifted slightly. Straighter. Still, the noise in the room didn't die down. If anything, it swelled. Another voice joined in from across the floor. A woman in a red gown with diamonds at her neck raised her voice like she was offering entertainment. "Come on, dance a little. It'll be fun. We've had enough slow jazz and dry speeches." Emma continued to pour, her expression unreadable, but the heat around her was real. She could feel eyes on her skin, feel the subtle pull of expectation. She was no longer invisible. She was a curiosity. A game. At the head table, Noah Alaric finally spoke. He had said nothing all evening, sipping dark liquor from crystal, his fingers idly playing with the edge of his cufflink. When he stood, the room leaned with him. His suit was tailored like armor, his voice a slow drawl soaked in confidence. "If she dances tango, I'll marry her," he said, loud and smooth, like it was the punchline of a private joke. The laughter this time was bigger, louder, carried by the clinking of glasses and the clatter of silverware. It rolled through the crowd like smoke. Emma didn't react at first. She just finished the pour. Then, quietly, she set the bottle back onto the tray and brought it close to her chest. Her fingers curled against the metal rim. She stood like that for a moment, perfectly still, in the eye of their amusement. A guest whispered, "She's embarrassed. She should be." Another voice, almost a whisper, said, "Watch. She'll run." But she didn't. Emma moved her tray slowly, carefully, to the edge of a nearby table. She placed it down as if it were something sacred, not stainless steel. Then she reached into her apron pocket, brushing the cloth there, and stepped away from her post. One step, then two. Her heels clicked gently against the marble floor as she made her way toward the open space in the center of the room. It wasn't a dance floor, not officially, but it had become one. Conversations faded, chairs turned, the quartet paused, even the laughter thinned into breathless watching. Emma didn't say a word. She didn't acknowledge Noah or anyone else. She simply stood in the spotlight that had begun to settle on her. Shoulders square, back straight, chin lifted just slightly. Her eyes scanned no one and everyone all at once. The game they were playing was no longer funny. Something was shifting, not in noise, but in weight. And though no one could name it, they could all feel it. The room waited. The music waited. And Emma, without smiling, without flinching, waited too. The first notes of Tango whispered through the air at 9:15 p.m. It wasn't loud or showy. It started soft, like something distant, a memory stirring from the floor itself. The band, sensing a shift they hadn't rehearsed for, adjusted without needing a cue. Strings found the rhythm. The bass breathed in slow. The violins slid across the silence like smoke curling under a door. Emma stood alone in the center of the room, the light above her casting no shadow. Her black dress didn't shimmer. Her shoes didn't sparkle. But the way she held herself turned the marble beneath her feet into a stage no one else could step on. Her arms lifted not high, just enough. Her foot moved not far, just enough. Her first step landed not as a beginning but as a response, like she was answering a question only she had heard. The music guided her, but she wasn't following. She was in command of every measure, every beat. The crowd leaned in, Laughter forgotten. No one called out. No one shifted in their seats. The space between each movement drew breath from the room. What began as mockery was now stillness. Her body curved through the rhythm, strong and intentional. It wasn't the dance of a girl trying to prove herself. It was the dance of a woman who already knew who she was. Her turns were sharp, her posture unwavering. Her dress flared once perfectly timed. She didn't look at anyone, but every person in that ballroom felt seen. Somewhere near the bar, a woman set her glass down without noticing. A man lowered his phone, recording forgotten in his palm. Noah Alaric, still seated at the head table, had stopped smiling. His eyes tracked Emma's every move. When she spun, he didn't blink. She moved as if the floor was hers to reclaim. No theatrics, no apology, only the sound of leather against marble and the heat of a song too old to be trendy, too honest to be ignored. The music wrapped around her, then pulled back, like it knew to give her space. As the last note fell, she stopped mid-step, arms extended, eyes forward, breath steady. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. The silence held for 1 second longer before the applause came, not rushed or loud, but rising, deliberate, like the room finally understood who they'd been watching. It was 9:30 p.m. when the applause finally slowed. Not stopped, just softened into something more like reverence. Emma stood at the center of the marble floor, her breathing calm, her chin still lifted. She hadn't bowed. She hadn't smiled. And somehow that made the moment even louder than the ovation. From the head table, Noah Alaric rose to his feet. He didn't rush it. He moved like a man who'd seen something he wasn't expecting and couldn't quite make sense of yet. The same man who'd turned her into a joke 20 minutes earlier now raised his glass with quiet hesitation. "You're no waitress," he said, voice low but clear. "You're a queen of tango." A few heads turned, not toward Emma, but toward him. He didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. His eyes never left her. Emma didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was already saying more than anyone else had all evening. The woman in the emerald dress, still seated but no longer smug, folded her arms across her chest. She tried to laugh, but the sound barely passed her lips. She leaned toward the man beside her, whispering something tight and bitter. Probably just a dance class girl. No one real. Emma turned toward her slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't move her hands, but her words cut like glass. And yet, here we are, still watching. The table quieted, eyes lowered, chairs shifted. No one knew what to do with their hands. Across the room, someone cleared their throat. Another attempt to break the tension, maybe reset the mood. A woman near the bar lifted her glass and called out, "To the waitress who thinks she's a star." Her tone was forced light, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Emma looked over, calm and steady. "To the woman who needs a toast to feel important," she replied, her voice quiet enough to sound casual, sharp enough to leave a bruise. The laugh that followed wasn't cruel. It was honest. A ripple of people chuckled, not at Emma, but at the woman who had tried and failed to flip the moment. Just then, the ballroom doors opened. No fanfare, no announcement. A man walked in alone, tall, built with a calm strength that didn't demand space, it naturally made room. His suit was dark and perfectly cut, not flashy. His steps were measured, intentional. His presence shifted the room before he said a word. Guests turned, conversations stopped. He didn't look around. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight to Emma. She saw him before he reached her. Her face didn't change, but something in her shoulders eased. He stopped beside her, not too close, not too far, just enough for the air between them to close without effort. "Ready to go." His voice was low, steady. She nodded once. "Yes." She didn't look back, didn't check to see who was watching. She simply stepped toward him. Together. They walked across the floor with the kind of quiet certainty that didn't need permission. The woman in the red dress stared with parted lips, trying to piece something together. The man in the navy suit gripped the edge of the table with fingers that had stopped shaking their ice. Someone near the corner whispered, "Is that her husband?" No one answered, but the way Emma's hand brushed lightly against his sleeve told them everything they needed to know. Noah sat back down. He didn't pick up his glass. He didn't smile. Emma and her husband reached the doors. Just before they exited, a voice broke the hush. "Wait a minute. Who do you think you are?" A man in a pinstriped suit stood now, his face flushed, his tone angry in that insecure way that only shows up when someone realizes they're not in control anymore. "You don't just walk out like that." Emma turned slowly. Her eyes found his, calm and unwavering. "Someone who doesn't need your permission?" That was all she said. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The silence returned, thick as velvet. Emma turned back. Her husband opened the door. They walked out side by side, into the night. No hurry, no fanfare. Just the steady rhythm of two people who knew exactly where they stood. The ballroom didn't move for several seconds after they left. No one picked up their forks, no one laughed, and no one dared call her just a waitress ever again. By the next morning, the ballroom had returned to silence. The tables were cleared. The flowers had wilted under the weight of too much perfume and not enough care. But the memory of the night clung to the walls like smoke. Emma Cruz was gone. Yet somehow, she was everywhere. At 8:15 a.m., a short clip surfaced online. No logos, no captions, just a hand-shot video of a woman in a black dress dancing tango under a chandelier. Her face wasn't fully visible, but her movements told the story better than any headline ever could. The comments started slowly. Then came the shares. Within hours, it spread like fire. By 10 o'clock, people were naming names. A woman in an emerald gown was identified in a freeze frame. A man in a navy suit was caught mid-smirk. Their remarks, once muttered to friends or meant for laughs, now echoed with cruelty when played back in 20-second loops. Brands noticed. Clients called. Contracts paused. Reputation teams scrambled. No one mentioned Emma by name. No articles profiled her. No interviews were scheduled. But the story found its way forward anyway. Not through her voice, but through the people who had tried to silence it. At 11:20 a.m., Claudia Jennings, the woman in green, received an email from a longtime client. The deal was off. No explanation. Just a cold line about values and optics. She stared at her phone for almost a minute before setting it down without blinking. By 1:30 p.m., Victor Hale, the hedge fund manager in the navy suit, returned to his office to find his assistant boxing up her things. She didn't say goodbye. A few hours later, his firm quietly pulled his bio from the website. It was like he had never been there. Noah Alaric stayed silent. There was no tweet, no apology, but he didn't show up to the next gala. And when his name came up in conversation, people paused before repeating it, like something had shifted. Through it all, Emma remained quiet. She wasn't tagged. She wasn't featured. She didn't have to be. At 6:40 p.m. that same day, she was seen at a small grocery store on the Upper West Side. Not photographed, just noticed. She picked up a carton of eggs, checked the date, and smiled softly when the cashier complimented her necklace. It was small, a rose pendant. Nothing flashy, just a memory made wearable. Behind her in line, someone whispered, "I think that's her." The person beside them nodded but didn't say anything. No one asked for a picture. No one interrupted her moment. She walked out of the store, bag in hand, coat collar up against the cold. At 8 o'clock, she was home. The windows glowed with the warm light of a quiet evening. No interviews, no press waiting outside. Just the soft shuffle of slippers on tile and the faint smell of something warm on the stove. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Her husband leaned against the counter. scrolling through something on his phone, not saying much. He didn't need to. The air between them was calm, safe. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small folded note. She had kept it from the night before. Her fingers smoothed the edges, and for a moment she just looked at it, her thumb brushing along the top like she was memorizing the texture. Outside, the city kept moving. Lights flickered on across buildings. Traffic hummed in the distance. But inside that apartment, time slowed. Emma looked down at the rose tattoo on her wrist, faded now but still whole. Her father's voice echoed faintly. Not loud, not clear, just present. You carry it with you, Mija, always. She closed her eyes for a breath, then opened them again. The applause had ended. The crowd had moved on. But the weight of what she'd done, how she stood there, how she never bowed, how she left without needing to prove anything still lived in every quiet moment that followed. She didn't win a crown. She didn't want one. She just danced and let the silence speak for itself.